Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Vanchakapatarabhischa Vipa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you so much for having me once again. Thank you for putting your videos on, those of you who have. And some of my friends are on here, some devotees that I know, Sham, Hare Krishna, Rukmini, and Mother Urmila. I don't know what you're doing here. I feel so embarrassed to speak in front of you. And, you know, I feel that you should be speaking. So please forgive me if I make any mistakes. And please chip in if you have anything to add. I feel mixed sharing pastimes of Balaram today. I feel very unqualified to represent and speak about him, but I'm going to share what we have in Shastra and, you know, just different things. I've also realizations I've heard from other devotees, and I hope that we are able to have a discussion today that helps us to celebrate his appearance, which is tomorrow. And I know it will be celebrated in so many temples and there's so many classes. And I believe Mother Urmila is also giving a class later today on Lord Balaram's appearance. So I'm sure if I miss anything or do not explain it properly, she will do a much better job of speaking about him than I will. So Lord Balaram, who is he? You know, it seems that in Shastra, those Vaishnavas who are so dear and intimate with Krishna, we often don't hear so much about them as individual personalities, but more about them in relationship with Krishna. And this is no surprise, because actually for every jiva, our full identity really manifests when we are connected to Krishna. And this is no different for Balaram either. However, Balaram's position is unique in that although he lives for Krishna and he really is not full in his existence without Krishna, he's also extremely unique in his relationship with Krishna. And he's unique in many ways, and I hope to share some of those with you. But he is also an individual, and I hope to share some of the individuality also with you today. So Lord Balaram is Krishna's older brother. So he appears, you know, when we speak of Krishna's pastimes, we speak of the pastimes that take place here, his Bhumi Leela, and we also speak of his Nitya Leela, which is not subjected to time, which is not subjected to any order of events happening, but is happening eternally. And so Lord Balaram is there in eternal existence in Golaka Vrindavan, having all of his pastimes with Krishna in his unique many different ways, but also his individual pastimes. But in Bhumi Leela, when we are celebrating the appearance of Krishna, we also celebrate the appearance of Balaram before Krishna's, because he is, in the earthly pastimes, particularly the emphasis of his arrival before Krishna's arrival is celebrated. So he appears originally in the womb of Mother Devaki, and as we know, Devaki and Vasudeva are imprisoned. And Gans is hell-bent on really killing all of their children, but particularly focusing on the 8th child. Now, before the 8th child, Krishna appears, Balaram appears. And he's in the womb of Mother Devaki. However, he's transferred by Yogamaya, he's transferred by Krishna Shakti to the womb of Mother Rohini. Why? Because Rohini is also one of Vasudev's wives, but she's under the shelter of Nanda Maharaj. It's because she is under the shelter of Nanda Maharaj, this is a safe way to make sure that Balaram is able to appear without being hurt by Kans. Although Kans cannot actually hurt the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in the Leela, you know, everything is arranged in such a way that our tiny brains can also make some sense of them. Although I know devotees sometimes get caught up in, well, I've heard people often ask, well, how is it that Balaram's only 2 weeks older than Krishna, and how can somebody go through an entire pregnancy in 2 weeks? How does this happen? Well, we cannot, measure time. First of all, we cannot measure time according to us, particularly with the Lord's pastimes. We cannot measure time by the ticking of our clock here. Okay, so time is not transcendental. Time is very different to material time. But also the way material time affects us is relative. It's relative because it depends on whether we are under the influence of time, but also where we are manifesting. We understand this principle of time affects us differently, even in the different planetary systems. For example, Brahma's lifespan is far longer than ours. Our time scale, our 4 yugas, go through millions of cycles, actually billions of cycles in Lord Brahma's time. So trying to make sense of Balaram Leela, Krishna Leela, even the Bhumi Leela within the remit of the normal 24-hour clock and the 30-day calendar, month cycle, or 28-day lunar cycle, we will just sit there, we'll remain stuck, and we will not be able to, dive into the pastimes. So let's park that. But Balaram appears 2 weeks before Krishna. And Prabhupada describes how actually Balaram is exactly the same as Krishna. The only difference is, and this is speaking about appearance, he's exactly the same as Krishna. The only difference is that he is white in complexion. So I want to describe Lord Balaram's appearance in terms of how he looks. And this is from Shri Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika by Kavi Karnapurna. So, Lord Balaram is 16 years old, full of the luster of youth, and has a fair complexion, the color of crystal. He wears blue garments and a garland of forest flowers. His handsome hair is tied in a graceful topknot. Splendid earrings adorn his ears, and his neck is splendidly decorated with garlands of flowers and strings of jewels. Splendid armlets and bracelets ornament Balaram's graceful and very strong arms, and his feet are decorated with jeweled anklets. Lord Balaram's beauty is enhanced by the earrings touching his cheeks. His face is decorated with tilak made from musk, and his broad chest is ornamented with a garland of gunja. Balaram's voice is very grave, and his arms are very long, touching his thighs. The splendor of Lord Balaram's form eclipses many millions of glistening rising moons, and the slightest scent of his boundless strength is sufficient to destroy many armies of demons. Although he knows the supernatural power of his younger brother Krishna, still out of love for him, he never leaves Krishna alone in the forest for even one moment. Balaram is Sri Krishna's dearest friend and is a great reservoir of many kinds of pastimes. Why? So, one of the things I was saying was Balaram's very unique. So one of the reasons he's very unique is he's actually the only personality to serve Krishna in every single rasa. So when we're speaking of rasas, what are we speaking about? By ras, we mean what is the taste, what is the nature of our relationship with Krishna? And we understand there's 5. We have Shantaras, which is neutrality, Dasyaras, servitude. We have Sakyaras, friendship, Vatsalya, which is the parental mood, and then conjugal love, which is romantic, and that can be married and unmarried, such as the gopis and the wives of Krishna. But Balaram's unique because he is always with Krishna in every ras, in every incarnation, and in every time. So at all times, in some shape or form, Balaram is with him. So if we look at, for example, in Shantaras, how does Balaram appear? How does Balaram serve Krishna in neutrality? He manifests as all of Krishna's paraphernalia. When Krishna appears, all of his paraphernalia is there. His brother appears before him, not just to be his brother, but to also appear as all of his paraphernalia. And in this way, he serves Krishna perfectly. You know, it's interesting, Balaram is also the potency of existence. And I was hearing in a class by Shiva Maharaj, actually he said that, he explains that actually Krishna can't exist without Balaram, because Balaram is the existence potency. So yes, Balaram is Krishna's first manifestation, but actually there's, you know, this tattva we have of simultaneously one and different is such a beautiful, you know, Chinta Veda Veda tattva is so beautiful because it applies in so many situations. And we can even see it in this relationship between Balaram and Krishna, that they are one, but they're very different, very unique. So he's there making sure that everything that Krishna requires is there for him in Chantaras. Then in Dasyaras, we see this mood manifesting differently in different manifestations of Balaram. So Balaram always has this mood with Krishna. Underneath everything, that what does Krishna need? He's constantly in pursuit of doing what pleases Krishna most, which is actually reconnecting all of us to him. Reconnecting all of us to him, making arrangements where, whether it's our service here, whether it's our service in Goloka, whether it's our service in Gauralila, Balaram is there in some shape or form facilitating this. And then we have Sakyaras. We understand Balaram as Krishna's friend as well as his brother. Brothers are friends. And even, you know, every pastime we hear about with the cowhead boys, Balaram is present, and we hear that Balaram has his own group of cowhead boys, Krishna has his own group of cowhead boys. They also mix their groups of cowhead boys and they play together and they have their teams. But then the Vatsalya mood is also there. As Krishna's older brother, Balaram also protects him. So it's like Balaram is Krishna's everything, in every shape and form, in every way, every moment, through all stages of time, whether here or in Goloka. Balaram is connected with Krishna. He's serving him, he's taking care of him. So Vatsalya is his older brother, he's protective. He's the one who goes to Mother Yashoda and says, "No, Maya, look, Krishna's got mud in his mouth. I think he's been eating mud. Please look after him." And then one which you may be wondering about, well, how does Balaram serve Krishna in conjugal love? How does he do this? So of course, Balaram doesn't directly interfere because or get involved himself as Balaram. Because we see that Balaram is Krishna's older brother, when he is in the presence of Krishna's gopis, the gopis have a reverential mood, you know, like, okay, this is my boyfriend, my lover's brother, his older brother. There's a degree of respect, a degree of separation, and a degree of appropriate behavior, both on the side of Balaram and on the side of the gopis. So Srimati Radharani and Balaram, these pastimes, they don't mix. He doesn't get directly involved. However, he expands as Ananga Manjari, who is Radharani's younger sister, and Ananga Manjari is married to the younger brother of Radharani's husband. And in this way, Ananga Manjari, being Radharani's dearmost sister, but also being a manifestation of Balaram, is directly involved in Krishna's conjugal loving pastime. So you see how unique Balaram is? He's there at all times in some shape or form. Krishna just simply cannot do without him. So he comes before Krishna to make arrangements in every way. And he is very, very beautiful. I want to share a little bit more about Balaram's appearance here in terms of through the different ages. So every time Krishna appears, Balaram's with him in different ways. So when Balaram appears with Krishna, when Krishna is in his form as Vishnu, Balaram is Anantashesh. When Balaram appears with Krishna in Gauralila, he is Lord Nityananda. So Balaram is always there. When Krishna is here as Ram, Balaram is there as Lakshmi. So again, here we see, Balaram's with Krishna all of the time, but he's completely adaptable. He changes, he responds to Krishna in his unique way according to what Krishna needs. As Lakshman, we see he is Krishna's younger brother. Balaram, his older brother. As Lord Nityananda, he doesn't even take birth in the same family. So again, Balaram is unique. And, this is Balaram Jayanti is one of my favorite festivals, because I think it's one of the few times, apart from in April when we have Balaram's Ras Yatra, where we celebrate Balaram's dancing with his gopis when he goes to visit Vrindavan. Other than that festival, this is probably one of the few times that we get to hear about and we get to glorify Lord Balaram. And those of you who have been to Krishna Balaram temple, those of you who have even heard the glories of Krishna Balaram temple, I'm sure that is one place where you really feel his presence strongly. He is the original guru, and this is another way that we can connect with him. So he's manifest in so many different pastimes. There are many ways for us to connect with Lord Balaram. As the original guru, we can understand, Prabhupada explains to us that Bala means strength, but he's referring to spiritual strength, and Ram is the reservoir of all pleasure. So Prabhupada encourages us to really pray to and approach Lord Balaram with this mood, that to give us this strength, spiritual strength, to approach Krishna, to reveal to us through the service of the spiritual master who we are to Krishna. Who are we to Krishna Balaram? Because our relationship with Krishna is not just with Krishna alone. We have our entire family. Our entire family, as we start to manifest, as our relationship with Krishna starts to grow, our relationship with our entire family, our spiritual family, our family beyond this world starts to grow. And that includes Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the Gopis, the Gopas, Balaram, includes everybody. And so actually, their personalities, who they are, become much more manifest to us, become much more important, because we move away from this idea that we have to recognize them according to our intelligence and their activities, but actually start to recognize them much more through the eyes of relationship. So as Krishna and Balaram, as they're getting older, after Balaram's appearance, as Balaram is with Krishna all of the time, he's also there very much for the activities in Vrindavan where Krishna is killing demons. And there are some demons that Balaram is responsible for killing entirely on his own. So these are specific demons that actually Balaram destroys. And we understand from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings that the demons of Vrindavan represent different anarthas, different things that we are trying to remove from our hearts in order to be able to approach Krishna as we are and as who he is. Not Krishna as an abstract idea, an ideology of a supreme God, a supreme person, but who he is as a person. And for that to happen, we also have to know who we are as a person. Beyond this, beyond the acculturated self, we have our authentic self, our real authentic self, not the psychological authentic self that everybody is, chasing after and talking about in media. We've all got to be authentic. It's practically impossible to be materially authentic, because there's no consistency with that authenticity. We can try, but because our needs, desires, and situation always changes, that authenticity is going to be fluid. Real authenticity is on the spiritual platform. So as we connect with the actual authentic self, rather than the false or the acculturated self or the temporary self, so then Krishna, simultaneously two things are happening. We are waking up from this dream, but as we wake up from the dream, we see Krishna for who he is. We see Balaram for who he is. So Balaram has a role in destroying, he destroys two particular demons. There's many demons he destroys, but whilst they're young boys, he destroys the demon of Dhenukasur, who is residing in the Talavan forest. And in the Talavan forest, we have the Tal tree. It's so named Talavan. Van means forest. Tal is a particular type of fruit tree. And the cowherd boys, you know, this forest is forbidden because it's owned by Kans, and it is looked after by Dhenukasur, the ass demon. An ass is similar to kind of like a donkey, and you know, so it's forbidden. The boys know this, but still they really want these fruits. They want to enjoy them, and particularly they want to enjoy them in the company of Krishna and Balaram. So they're asked to go there, and they're fearless. You know, when your friend is, you know, by your side, when you're feeling completely full, you know, we often explain it that, okay, well, if you have Krishna with you, what reason is there to fear, right? But actually, the relationship we have with Krishna, the relationship the cowherd boys have with Krishna is not one of, oh, Krishna will protect me because he's God. What the relationship they have with him is they feel full because they give themselves to him wholly. When we give ourselves to someone completely, we feel their full presence. And when we feel someone's full presence, and the full presence of Krishna, the full presence of Balaram is the full presence of everything. When we feel that full presence, there's nothing to be scared of. So they feel this. They feel his love, they feel his affection, they feel his protection, and in their unique way, they also have their relationship with him because they are also fully present as who they are. So they're enjoying, they're playing like this, you know, and they're enjoying the fruits. And of course, Dhenukasur, he represents, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that he represents this quality of ignorance of spiritual knowledge, ignorance of who we are, which gives rise to the me and mine mentality, which is very much what Gant said, very much what Dhenukasur, this is my forest, this is my talavan, these are my fruits. What are you doing enjoying them without my permission? So when he approaches with his other asuras, the other ass demons, and he tries to hurt the boys, it does not take very much for Balaram to destroy any demon, much like it does not take very much for Krishna to destroy any demon. And, you know, in Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, it's described very beautifully how Balaram literally takes the hind legs of Dhenukasur and spins him around his head and destroys him very quickly. We also understand that Balaram is responsible for destroying Pralambasur, who represents lust and attachment to fame and adoration. So why? What's the significance of this? You know, why is it that there's some demons which are destroyed by Balaram and others are destroyed by Krishna? It's because Balaram represents the source of Guru Tattva. Okay, he's the original Guru, Adi Guru. There are certain, you know, we understand that there are certain anarthas that we have which, through our process of sadhana bhakti, through our process of chanting, they are removed, just like the dust from a mirror is cleaned. And then there's certain anarthas which really require endeavor on our part. You know, we look at the attachment to fame and adoration, and it lingers for a long time. We understand this by studying Nectar of Devotion. We understand this by studying Madhurya Kadambini, that they can linger for a very long time. And we should not be under a misconception that because something can linger for a long time, it can even be there up until the stages of bhav, that we have to wait until we are more steady to address it. Actually, through rigorous introspection, we can even address our attachment to fame and adoration in the earlier stages. And what is fame or adoration? We shouldn't be waiting for the day when fame and adoration is something, you know, which is only obvious to us because we are looking for millions of followers or, you know, to be glorified. Actually, fame and adoration represents this attachment to being validated and appreciated. And we have got, you know, we're talking much more about how devotees should be validated and appreciated, how we want to create a healthy community of loving version of relationships. But us as individuals, we have to be assessing, after so many years in the movement, after so much time in practicing, how much is my service, how much is my commitment to the process still reliant on appreciation and validation? You know, this is the difference between striking that balance between ignoring it completely and actually knowing when it's time to, I've had enough, And it's time to start actually practicing letting go of it, because the false ego is insatiable. It's because the false ego is insatiable, it doesn't actually matter how much validation and appreciation we get. It's not going to be enough. And we see this because there are people who have so much fame and adoration, so much validation, and yet they feel pain, and yet they are not satisfied. So what does this have to do with this principle of Adi Guru, original Guru, Lord Balarama's potency as Guru? What it has to do with is, as we place our endeavor in removing the demons that Lord Balaram is particularly responsible for, that endeavor attracts his mercy, and he cuts away with his plow. You know, we see, you know, just like Krishna is often seen with his flute, always seen with his flute. And you think of flute, you think of Krishna. So when we see the plow, when we think of the plow, we think of Balaram. Although Balaram also holds a flute, he also has a cow. And, you know, going back to what Prabhupada says, actually they're exactly the same in appearance. Just Balaram is fair in complexion, white like a crystal, more like the snow-capped mountains. So we can connect with Balaram in this way initially, as the original Guru, as someone who we can call out to, where his name is there in the Mahamantra. He is fully present in the Mahamantra. When we call Ram, Prabhupada explains, we can call Balaram or we can call Lord Ramachandra. When we're calling Balaram, we are calling to our aid this unique person with his grave voice and his white skin and his long arms and his bright blue dhoti and his one earring, who is so beautiful, who is so attractive, who is the reservoir of pleasure, the reservoir of strength, the reservoir of spiritual strength, who is Krishna's everything, who Krishna cannot exist without, and yet he's also there completely for us, waiting every moment to help us, to assist us. Yes, what do you need? What do you need? How can I be there for you? And we really see this with Lord Nityananda, right? Nityananda Ram, he's there. What can I do? How can I connect you again? So when we try with rigorous introspection to be honest, so rigorous means really looking, but looking honestly and regularly, not just when it, you know, when things become difficult, but actually consistently. That actually part of my sadhana, part of me showing that I'm serious, is that when I call out, my calling out is off the back of also really looking at what is it that I need to let go of. Balaram's there, he's always ready, waiting to wake us up from this nightmare. It's not even a dream, it's a nightmare, but sometimes we get so used to a nightmare, it starts to become our real life, and it can even feel pleasurable, right? So, but nightmares we usually want to wake up from, especially when we feel the pain, right? If we're in a dream state and it's a good dream, nobody wants to wake up, isn't it? But when it's a bad dream, we all want to wake up. So this plow that Balaram has, you know, this plow as the original Guru that he uses for so many things, but one of the ways he uses it is to plow our hearts. So when he's plowing our hearts, so many things come up. When we're chanting the holy names and we call him and we're conscious of calling him. Okay, so often we can get caught up in our chanting. Okay, I'm chanting and I've got to be attentive and I've got to listen and, you know, and embrace the holy name. And we're still doing it very much, maybe mechanically or in an abstract way. But when we start to think of the personalities behind Hare, behind Krishna, behind Ram, when we think of the personality, we also then start to engage with every aspect, or more aspects of the name, right? We hear about the guna, the rupa, the lila, all being non-different to the name, to the person. So if I can invite you, encourage you to do one thing when we're chanting in honor of Lord Balaram, whether you are mesmerized by his beauty, whether you are attracted by his mercy as Lord Nityananda, whether you are attracted by his service to Lord Ram as Lakshman, maybe you are attracted to him as Ananta Shesh, being Lord Vishnu's bed. Whichever way you are attracted to Balarama, he's there, fully present in the Mahamantra. And I'd like to invite you to, using your rigorous introspection on how we can remove the weeds, how we can remove the anarthas, in appealing to him for his assistance, that to really think of him when we are chanting, when we come across his name. Now, different, amongst us, we're going to be attracted to him in different ways, and we're going to be drawn to different parts of him. Maybe we're attracted to him as the original Guru, and our experience of him is really through taking shelter of Guru Tattva. Still, Balaram can give us great insight and facilitate even the development of our relationship with the spiritual master. So on this day, on Lord Balaram's appearance day, try and connect with him if you can. We can connect through offering him his favorite dishes, his favorite drinks like Varuni. We can get to know him a little better by reading about his pastimes. So many pastimes. In the 10th canto, there's so many. We forget there's the pastimes of him killing the demons when he's young with Krishna. Then there's the pastimes of him killing the demons that he kills after they leave Vrindavan. So, for example, Dantavakra, and Balval. And there are other pastimes of his association with his own gopis when he returns to Vrindavan. The potency he has in understanding Krishna's heart. Krishna, after he leaves Vrindavan and he's missing the Brajabasis because they are his everything, he first sends Uddhav. And in that journey, Uddhav is actually woken up to a deeper level of understanding, love for Krishna. He's not able to pacify the gopis, but that journey is necessary for him to wake up to something deeper. So Balaram goes, and because Balaram knows Krishna's heart, he is able to explain and pacify and reassure and give them some solace before then Krishna arrives. So there's so much there in the 10th canto. There's so much there in Krishna book. There's so many ways to approach him and understand him, just as there are so many ways to approach him, understand Krishna. So Balaram has his own gopis. He has his own wives. He has his own expansions. He has his own partial expansions. He's also being the original, first expansion of Krishna. All the other expansions come from Balaram. So there's so much there to speak about Balaram, and I would like to, I guess, defer to you, and I would like to invite Rukmini and Mother Urmila to say something more. Or if anybody has any comments or questions, but you guys are there, please say something. I mean, I said this last time, I really think Rukmini Devi Das should be doing some more on Sadhvi Sangha, please. And I can see you there, and I can, I'm so happy to see you. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop there.
Hare Krishna. I actually had a question that just occurred to me just before you started speaking. And so you were speaking about how Dhenukasur is, that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Dhenukasur represents the avidya, the ignorance, and the false ego, me, mine. And so what occurred to me was that in the 3rd canto, so this is 3rd canto, chapter 26, verse 25. I'll just read a couple verses. Sahasrashira Sangsakshad Yamanantam Prachakshatu Sankarsharnakyam Purusham Bhutendriya Manomayam. The threefold ahankar, the source of the gross elements, the senses and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name of Sankarshan, who is directly Lord Ananta with 1,000 heads. So that sounds like it is directly Balaram, and how I've always found this part of the 3rd canto very mystical and mysterious. So it's he himself who is that sense of me and mine. and in some sense. And how is that? And the next verse says, Kartritvam karanatvam cha karyatvam cheti lakshanam shantaghora vimudhatvam iti vasyadaham kriteh. This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull, according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So there's a whole thing about all four of the Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, but in particular, this ahankar, this false ego, somehow it is, or it originally comes from Balaram, and then in this pastime of killing Dhenukasur, he's the one who's responsible for destroying it. So maybe, do you have any thoughts on that?
What comes to me is he's the cause and the cure. So only the cause can cure, right? Ultimately, everything also comes from Krishna, and we hear that actually Krishna is also the only one who can remove it. So this is when you were reading, I was thinking, yeah, he's the cause, he's the source, but he's also the cure. Who better to remove the cause than the person, who better to create the cure than the person who created or is the cause? Yes, we see this with infections. We see this with anything that is, even you look at technology, when someone creates a virus for a computer, they also create the code to cure the virus. Yes. So yeah, Balaram is the cause, and he has to be in one sense, because if he's Krishna's first expansion before everything else then manifests, like we have the Chaturvyuha, and then from the Chaturvyuha we have the different, we have the Vishnu Tattva manifesting from that, and so on and so forth, and then Dasavatar. So everything then comes from the Mahatattva, which means false ego, mind, intelligence are 8 material elements. So yes, the cause and the cure is Lord Balaram. And I like the sound of that. What are your realizations on that? What came to you when you read that?
Oh, just the sense of wonder. I enjoy, being confused. So, so that's why I asked you.
I love you enjoy being confused. That's nice. That's nice. Very few people enjoy being confused. Most people enjoy being clear and knowing. Mother Urmila, are you still there? Do you have any insight?
On this thing that Rukmini brought up?
Yes, or anything else.
Well, the thing that Rukmini brought up, I was thinking Balaram as the platform of existence. So as he is existence, then the false concept of existence would have to come from him. Because all existence has to come from him, has to be him. All existence has to be him. And I was also thinking of something Rukmini has reminded me of, Matasmatir Gyanam Apohanam Cha, that Krishna says, I give knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So even when we're getting forgetfulness, Krishna's there. So Balaram is there as both the real and the false identity, and that if we deal with him in his, it's just like we say, there's the internal energy, you can deal with Radharani, or you can deal with Durga, depending on how you're dealing with her, who you're going to get. Ravana tries to take away Sita and he gets a false Sita. So if we're trying to deal with Balaram in a false way, we get a false ego. And if we're trying to deal with Balaram in a real way, then we get our real ego. And especially related to what you were saying about how Balaram is revealing our actual identity because he is existence. So it just depends how we approach him. Do we approach him in a false way? Then he appears as false ego. We approach him in a real way, he appears as our real ego. But I have a question for you. So you were saying that Balaram is there whenever Krishna is there, and you were talking about Krishna's human-like manifestations, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna himself, Lord Ramachandra. What about Varaha and Nrsimha and Kurma and Matsya, or even, Vamandev, Narayan, Parshuram? Where's Balaram?
He's always there as his paraphernalia.
Oh. All of the paraphernalia or just particular paraphernalia? Do you know?
My understanding is all of the paraphernalia. That's my understanding, but I'm sure your understanding is more. That's my understanding from what I've read. That he's always there. He's existence, right? So he's always there. Every incarnation, he's always there, right by Krishna's side.
Are any of the paraphernalia ever jivas? Like, are there paraphernalia, are there jewelry or flowers that are also different jivas or different shaktis that are, you know, because sometimes we hear about how the Lord's surrounded by all of the different shaktis, and
yes,
you know, that these are all different personalities.
Mm.
At the same time, then we're saying Balarama is everything. So that's, sorry to be more confusing, but Rukmini, be happy that I'm
Rukmini loves being confused, so it's okay. Yeah, I hear an answer in your question as well, actually. Yes, the thing is, it can all be Balaram. All of those things can be Balaram. At the same time, there can be individuality, in the sense that, like we hear the Sudarshan Chakra. You know, we understand Sudarshan Chakra as its own personality. There's a personality of Sudarshan Chakra, and then there's Sudarshan Chakra itself as a chakra, manifesting as the personality manifests as a chakra. We also read about Krishna's flute having emotion, having feeling. So my understanding of that is that really the full individuality manifests in Nitya Leela. And in Bhumi Leela, there is more of the Balaram element in the manifestation of Krishna's different paraphernalia in his different avatars.
Thank you.
Do you resonate with that? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so
Anyone
much
else?
for this wonderful discussion between these senior Vaishnavis. I'm sure we're all really appreciating it. So we're just waiting for some questions to come in, but I thought I'd like to ask Chit Shakti Mataji to maybe give us some more practical ways in which we can rigorously reflect and thereby come closer to Lord Balaram. Would you recommend things like journaling, for example?
There's different ways. I mean, all of the different ways are rooted in our 6 loving exchanges for Vaishnavas, and particularly in revealing the mind in confidence and hearing from others. This can happen through journaling. Of course it can. Because as Vaishnavas, when we're journaling, we're not simply relating to a piece of paper and our psychological dialogue. We have many people to write to. It's but it's also very unique, individual. If we feel comfortable journaling and addressing Lord Balaram as Lord Balaram, we can do so. Maybe we feel more comfortable journaling and addressing Krishna. Or maybe we feel more comfortable addressing our guru or Prabhupada or one of the acharyas. But this is the beauty of spiritual journaling, is that we actually get reciprocation directly from the individual we're journaling to. If you just wrote to a celebrity and never posted the letter, they're not going to reciprocate. There's just no reciprocation, they're limited, But we're actually connecting with fully manifested, pure individuals here who are able to hear our hearts independent of time and space. So journaling is just one way to reveal our mind in confidence and to hear that reciprocation. It's important we connect through service also. But before, as a background to service and journaling and healthy dialogue with our peers, seniors and juniors, we need to know something about who we are addressing. And this is why we have, part of the reason we celebrate appearance days is it's an opportunity for us to understand and get to know the personality behind the person. And just like next week, we'll be having a whole week of Krishna Katha to understand. And we could have a gazillion days of Krishna Katha, of Balaram Katha, of Radharani Katha, of Vrindavan Katha, and we won't cover everything because there's so much. But read about these personalities because they are our real life. They always have been and always will be. We are just disconnected temporarily. Like I'm saying, we're just in a dream state. We're asleep. Waking up is simply a choice, because, you know, when we're waking up, yes, pain in the dream makes us want to wake up. We rarely want to wake up from a good dream, but we're also surrounded by people who will assist us in waking up. They'll remind us, hey, it's time to wake up, you know? And when we see them, if our connections, if our relationships with those around us who are helping us to wake up are strong, then there's no reason to stay in the dream state, right? When our real life is strong, even if the dream feels good, we realize, actually, my real life's much better. And we want, so who in our waking life, and when I'm saying waking life, I'm talking about two waking lives. I'm talking about the waking life here, but I'm talking actual waking life, waking up to who we are, which we do through sadhana bhakti initially, right? But through our sadhana bhakti, the relationships we have, even if we're looking at Guru Tattva, even if we're looking at our relationship with Prabhupada and with our spiritual masters, even with our Shiksha gurus, this is Balarama coming through. Okay, how are we relating to them? That point that Mother Urmila made really beautiful about how we approach them. If we approach them falsely, we'll be reciprocated with on the level of the false ego. If we approach them in a real way, then that is how we will see who they actually are. We'll see who we actually are. But this can also affect how we engage with the process, even engage with sadhana bhakti, you know, because it can become very easy after practicing Krishna consciousness for a significant period of time that our external activities are enough to tick the box of feeling like a devotee. But actually being a devotee is very different. You know, I saw in, you know, with serving Srila Bhakti Maharaj, that it was very evident that the mood in which a disciple approaches the spiritual master determines what aspect the spiritual master reveals of themselves. And this is true in our journaling and our conversations and with our relationship with our sadhana in itself and where our sadhana takes us. Even our sadhana can simply reinforce our false ego, or it can liberate us. It's up to us, because our attitude counts for so much, and our attitude means much more the more we progress. You know, and the deeper we want to go, the more we want to wake up. It's that desire, that greed, that hankering to be awake, which qualifies us. So when you're saying techniques to rigorously be introspective, there's lots, but use the techniques that, you know, because we are conditioned, there are going to be some methods that suit us more than others. Some people love writing and journaling. Others are not so much. Others I see, they prefer to do voice notes, you know. Others prefer to have dialogue and conversation. And just like we rigorously introspect and we pull out our weeds and we want to be having this dialogue, we should also not be so scared if those around us cannot fulfill everything we need as our needs change. Because if we are going to grow and the people around us don't grow, sometimes, you know, you may feel I should hold back so that so I can have the same friends. But if we grow, those same friendships or conversations may not be nourishing in the same way. Now, that doesn't mean, you know, we put them to the side, but seeking out friendships and relationships which help us to cultivate the different aspects of our relationship with Krishna or Balarama or Radharani, whoever it is we have an affection for, is really important. And rigorous introspection helps with that, you know, because it means we are showing Krishna that I don't just have an intention to come closer, but I'm giving some time to reflect on that intention, put some energy into it, so that it then transforms from intention to action. And then mercy is all around, and mercy is always available. We're surrounded by mercy. Okay, the mercy principle is there. It's up to us whether we take shelter of the mercy principle or we just take shelter of the laws of nature and the modes of material nature. All these energies are coexisting, acting at the same time. We just decide based on what we're tuning into, right? Goloka Vrindavan is right here, right in front of us. There's just a very thin veil. Whether we see, whether we engage with that side, you know, are we in that world or this world? Right? Just like when we're asleep, reality is just there. There's just a thin thin veil between being asleep and being awake, right? It's a choice, it's a decision. So, you know, we hear so much about take your life in your own hands, feel empowered, change your future in the moment. And, you know, people get really, they love these motivational speeches, like, yeah, I'm going to do it. You know, yeah, I'm going to go hear from motivational speakers because it's going to help me in my Krishna consciousness. And yes, we can get some good techniques, but actually, but what's the purpose of that? Because the purpose of where we put our intention, the purpose of where we put our motivation, the purpose behind our action is actually what determines what the end result is. Isn't this what Bhagavad Gita is all about? Right? Arjuna knows what his nature is, and even though Krishna has to remind him, you know, your nature is to be a warrior in this world. But actually becoming Krishna conscious, the choice is, who am I going to have this nature for? So rigorous introspection doesn't have to be hard work. When we do anything regularly and deeply, actually the maintenance of it is very little, right? It's like even cleaning your house. If you are somebody who cleans regularly and cleans deeply regularly, there's not a lot to clean. In the beginning there is, but then after that it's just...
Thank you so much for all these practical tips. I'm definitely going to apply it in my life. So we have a question from the audience. So she says, Balarama has many gopis in Vrindavan, but why only one wife in Dwarka?
Wow. Okay. Why only one wife in Dwarka? Many gopis in Vrindavan, but why only one wife in Dwarka? Sadly, there are very few references to the marital and conjugal relationships of Balarama. What little is there, I mean, literally, there are just 1 or 2 verses that refer to this, are that, you know, again, coming back to, for example, we look at, so there's a reference in Gauragana Dishtipika referring to a Sri Gadadhar Das. So this is not Gadadhar as in Panchtattva Gadadhar, but an associate of Lord Nityananda. And this associate of Lord Nityananda is a combined manifestation of a partial incarnation of Radharani's effulgence, but also Purnananda, who is Lord Balaram's principal gopi. That is what's described by acharyas. Now, this principal gopi is manifest, and there's another principal gopi of Varuni. So there's Varuni, the drink, and then there's Varuni, the personality. So the understanding is that in Lord Nityananda's pastimes, both of these personalities appear as Lord Nityananda's 2 wives. And also Janava Devi is an expansion of Revati. But in terms of giving you any more Shastric references as to why he has only 1 wife in Dwarka, that unfortunately I cannot give you. Maybe Rukmini has more insight on this topic, because I know you have affection for Janava Devi. Are you able to say more?
Unfortunately, I don't have any more Shastric references than you do. One thing I could say is that Balaram, always being in the mood of serving Shri Krishna, he puts himself in the background. He's sort of a shy, retiring type. So the story of Revati is actually, it's in the 9th canto, and it's a very amazing story. So that's whom we hear about. We don't know that there aren't other wives. I mean, he's the expansion potency, right? He's the expansive potency. So, and you know, Krishna expands so many times just to meet with all his other wives. That's what Narada Muni sees with such amazement when he goes and visits Dwarka and sees that in each house of each of those other wives, Krishna is doing a different thing to please one of them. So how can the expansive potency be less than the condensed? So he's maybe a bit more discreet.
I like this point that just because we don't hear about them doesn't mean they don't happen. So yes, That's really nice. I really like that explanation. But yeah, we don't. I think we have to be careful where there isn't a Shastric reference to, just kind of just say, okay, there isn't a Shastric reference to this, and maybe some things are more about revelation. Because even if we look at what's in Shastra, it only scratches the surface in terms of how expansive, how unlimited Krishna's pastimes, are, and how many of us, the magnitude, the number of us who are constantly in connection with the Lord. Constantly, when we read the writings of the Goswamis, there are millions, billions of gopis and gopas, and all have their different groups and all have their different services. Each of these billions all feel like Krishna or Balarama are just exactly only with them. So, and if we were to have a literature to describe every single thing, we just would not be able to take enough births to read it all. So I think there's some things which we will get the answer to if it's appropriate for us through revelation, when the time is right.
Thank you for that beautiful answer and emphasizing how important it is to, read Shastra and not just make things up by ourselves, I guess. So we have another question this one's from Facebook. If when chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we chant Rama in the mood of calling out to Lord Balaram, then in what mood, who should we meditate on when we chant Hare?
So Hare is Radharani, Krishna's pleasure-giving potency. There's different ways of understanding the Mahamantra at different stages of practice. But I guess the point I was trying to make is when we're chanting, yes, we want to, when we're talking about trying to chant attentively, part of that chanting attentively is to bring the mind back to the holy name. But I guess what I was encouraging or inviting is that we stop or we move forward from just the utterance of the name to actually personalizing who's behind the name. So with Hare, we are addressing the feminine aspect of Krishna. And there are many feminine, pleasure-giving personalities of Krishna, for Krishna. So but Hare represents that side.
Thank you for that answer. So I see we don't have any more questions. I don't know if there's perhaps one or two points you'd like to make before we finish off.
No, is there anybody else who'd like to make any comments or share anything? There's so much to say and maybe I've missed things.
Hare Krishna, Citi Shakti.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for the very inspiring class. So I have a question about whether you could maybe elaborate on one specific demon killing pastime a little bit more. And then if you could also then just illuminate to us, like what does that mean for us in our lives? Like what does that demon, symbolize? And how can we meditate upon and benefit from this pastime?
Do you want me to say more about the Dhenukasura pastime? Because I thought I did that with what you said. Maybe I didn't say enough. Is there anything more?
Another one of the other, because Balaram kills several demons.
He does. He does indeed.
So another.
Do we have time? Do we have time?
If you have time, it would be lovely to hear.
Absolutely. Okay. I think let's go straight to Bhagavatam. Then in that case, let's go straight to Bhagavatam for this. Because I think it would be really nice to actually read directly from the 10th canto.
Yes. Thank you very much.
No, you're very welcome. So what I'll do is maybe we can, it's just because my eyes have fallen on this, but chapter 67, Lord Balaram slays Dvivida gorilla. Okay, so I'll read the verses, the English translations, and then maybe we can share some reflections, okay? So the glorious King Parikshit said, I wish to hear further about Sri Balaram, the unlimited and immeasurable Supreme Lord, whose activities are all astounding. What else did he do? Sri Sukadev Goswami said, there was an ape named Dvivda, who was a friend of Narakasura's. This powerful Dvivda, the brother of Mainda, had been instructed by King Sugriv to avenge the death of his friend Narak. The ape Dvivda ravaged the land, setting fires that burned cities, villages, mines, and cowherd dwellings. Once Dvivda tore up a number of mountains and used them to devastate all the neighboring kingdoms, especially the province of Anartha, wherein dwelt his friend's killer, Lord Hari. Another time he entered the ocean and with the strength of 10,000 elephants churned up its water with his arms and thus submerged the coastal regions. The wicked ape tore down the trees in the hermitages of exalted sages and contaminated their sacrificial fires with his feces and urine. Just as a wasp imprisons smaller insects, I actually find the gorillas past was quite gross, to be honest, but just as a wasp imprisons smaller insects, he arrogantly threw both men and women into caves in a mountain valley and sealed the cave shut with boulders. He's really quite violent and grotesque. Once, while Dvivda was thus engaged in harassing the neighboring kingdoms and polluting women of respectable families, he heard very sweet singing coming from the Revataka mountain. So he went there. There he saw Sri Balaram, the lord of the Yadus, adorned with a garland of lotuses and appearing most attractive in every limb. He was singing amidst a crowd of young women, and since he had drunk Varini liquor, his eyes rolled as if he were intoxicated. His body shone brilliantly as he behaved like an elephant in a rut. The mischievous ape climbed a tree branch and then revealed his presence by shaking the trees and making the sound kila kila. When Lord Baladev's consorts saw the ape's impudence, they began to laugh. They were, after all, young girls who were fond of joking and prone to silliness. Even as Lord Balaram looked on, Dvivda insulted the girls by making odd gestures with his eyebrows, coming right in front of them and showing them his anus. Angered, Lord Balaram, the best of fighters, hurled a rock at him, but the cunning ape dodged the rock and grabbed the Lord's pot of liquor, further infuriating Lord Balaram by laughing and by ridiculing him. Wicked Dvivda then broke the pot and offended the Lord even more by pulling at the girl's clothing. Thus the powerful ape, puffed up with false pride, continued to insult Sri Balaram. Lord Balaram saw the ape's rude behavior and thought of the disruptions he had created in the surrounding kingdoms. Thus the Lord angrily took up his club and his plough weapon, having decided to put his enemy to death. Mighty Dvivda also came forward to do battle. Uprooting a shal tree with one hand, he rushed toward Balaram and struck him on the head with the tree trunk. But Lord Shankarshan remained as motionless as a mountain and simply grabbed the log as it fell upon his head. He then struck Dvivda with his club, named Sunanda. Struck on the skull by the Lord's club, Dvivda became brilliantly decorated by the outpour of blood, like a mountain beautified by red oxide. Ignoring the wound, Dvivda uprooted another tree, stripped it of leaves by brute force, and struck the Lord again. Now enraged, Lord Balaram shattered the tree into hundreds of pieces, upon which Dvivda grabbed yet another tree and furiously hit the Lord again. This tree too, the Lord smashed into hundreds of pieces. Thus fighting the Lord, who again and again demolished the trees he was attacked with, Dvivda kept on uprooting trees from all sides until the forest was left treeless. The angry ape then released a rain of stones upon Lord Balaram, but the wielder of the club easily pulverized them all. Dvivda, the most powerful of apes, now clenched his fists at the end of his palm tree-sized arms, came before Lord Balaram and beat his fists against the Lord's body. The furious lord of the Yadavs then threw aside his club and plough, and with his bare hands hammered a blow upon Dvivida's collarbone. The ape collapsed. When he fell, O tiger among the gurus, Revataka mountain shook, along with its cliffs and trees, like a wind-tossed boat at sea. In the heavens, the demigods, perfect mystics, and great sages cried out, "Victory to you, obeisances to you, excellent, well done," and showered flowers upon the Lord. Having thus killed Dvivida, who had disturbed the whole world, the Supreme Lord returned to his capital as the people along the way chanted his glories. I'm just going to I'm going to go back to verse 16, okay, read Srila Prabhupada's purport and the Sanskrit. So, tam tasya vinayam drishtva tesham cha tad upadritan krudo mushala madata halam chari jigamashya. Lord Balaram saw the ape's rude behavior and thought of the disruptions he had created in the surrounding kingdoms. Thus the Lord angrily took up his club and his plough weapon, having decided to put his enemy to death. So Prabhupada explains the word avinayam means without humility. Dvivida, completely lacking in modesty and humility, shamelessly performed the most wicked activities. Lord Balaram knew of the great disturbances Dvivida had caused to people in general. Apart from the vulgar behavior the ape was exhibiting in the Lord's own presence, the offensive ape would now have to die. There's so much in this one chapter. One thing that I find very attractive is that Lord Balaram's with his gopis. It's very, there's a softness to this chapter. There's a personal aspect to it, giving us a little peek. You were asking earlier, how come Balaram, when he has one wife, we get a little sneak peek, just these few little smatterings of verses that we get about, Balaram's enjoying with his gopis. But this particular verse, and I guess the mood of this particular chapter and highlighting Dvivida Gorilla is that, he was really, his offensive behavior is really quite repulsive, to the point where it's not just repulsive, it's extremely offensive. And it takes little or nothing for Balaram to destroy him, especially once he's taken the decision that actually this personality's life, it just needs to simply end. And we read throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many personalities where the offense is so great that the only solution for it is for that personality to be killed. Right? We also see this, for example, in the pastime of Daksha. Right? His offense is so great that actually the only thing really to do, and Prabhupada explains this in his purport, is really he needs to be destroyed. And I think as Vaishnavas, for us, one way we can see this is, we understand offensive behavior as something that can quite literally kill our spiritual life. We don't have so much adhikar or lifespan that every time we make an offense that's grave, we will be, quite literally, our life will be ended. But our spiritual life can be ended. We talk about the mad elephant offense, the offense of the aparad, the offense of disturbing Vaishnavas, offensive behavior towards Vaishnavas. And just this feels like that warning, that this warning that, whilst we may not be qualified, we'll have the lifespan to have our life quite literally destroyed, but our life is really our spiritual life. Our life is just changing bodies, right? So all we're simply doing is changing bodies, but actually to have our spiritual life frozen or ended, it feels, because when our spiritual bank account is frozen, when we no longer have access to our sukriti, to our spiritual credits, no longer even have access to mercy, okay? Then this is like Krishna, Balaram putting an end to Dvivida. Balaram putting an end to your nonsense has gotten just so out of hand, I have no choice but to just stop you in your tracks. And better than removing you from your body, I'll just remove you from connection to any progress you've made. So how do we see this? Again, Balaram acting as guru principle. You know, sometimes we can't cheat. I mean, we can choose to cheat, but we can't cheat and get away with it. There's no such thing, okay? And we can't cheat Guru and Krishna. Krishna can allow us to think we're cheating him, but eventually we have to suffer the consequences. The question is, how long do we want to remain in illusion about that, right? That my cheating means I'm winning. So we can't think that we are getting away with offensive behavior. Sometimes we're offensive and we don't feel the repercussions immediately because we may be floating on previous credits. Or we may also be simultaneously attracting the mercy of Vaishnavas. But there is a tipping point for all of us. Just like with Kants, there was a tipping point, wasn't there? When he committed a certain number of sinful, offensive activities, life has just had to be ended. So for all of us, we also have this tipping point. So with this pastime, there is an invitation here that, again, going back to this beautiful point that Mother Rumala made about how we approach Balaram depends on what we get from him. So we approach him with the false ego, which is where all our offenses are born from. He'll destroy us. We approach him with love and affection. He's there with the gopis in the Revata mountains, right? So Vaishnava Parad, you know, sometimes we get so caught up in what shouldn't I do to avoid Vaishnava Parad that we can almost paralyze ourselves with the analysis, almost stop keeping relationships as a way to avoid making offenses. But Krishna consciousness is progressive. It's about growth. You know, we hear about growth mindset. There's nothing more growth mindset than Krishna consciousness. So rather than focusing on the don't commit offenses, let's do the opposite. Rather than avoiding offensive behavior, let's engage with pleasing behavior. Right? There we have the gopis in the mountains engaging with Balarams in such a way that they're pleasing him. So he offers them all protection. We have Dvivida engaging with him where he's offending him, and so he's met with destruction. So rather than avoiding offensive behavior, let's engage with more positive, pleasing interactions with each other. Because where energy is then placed in how do I please you rather than how do I avoid hurting you, again, on all levels, psychologically, spiritually, in terms of karmically, it all leads to a more positive outcome. So let's focus on pleasure giving rather than offense avoiding. I don't know who asked that question. Was that you, Sharadia? Was it Kamania? Who asked?
Hare Krishna, it's me, it's Sharadia that asked.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you for asking that and encouraging us to read another pastime and to go a little deeper with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this beautiful class and for
Someone's saying something, but then they cut out, and I think there's something in the chat room as well.
Yeah, Sharadia's internet isn't so good, but I'll ask this question in the
Apologies,
chat.
I know I started late, but my internet also decided to shut down.
Cool. So she asked, do we need to cultivate a relationship with Balaram as guru?
Do we need to cultivate a relationship? No, nothing's, you know, we don't need to or have to do anything. Okay. And who we and how we approach them, that we have a wide berth. Okay. But what's helpful is when we understand the different connections between different personalities, it can be helpful because, for example, in our relationship with our spiritual master, depending on how much personal interaction we have with them or how deep that relationship is going, it can be difficult. We can find it challenging. You know, I remember sometimes when I would get chastised, especially, you know, with Bhaktisiddhartha Maharaj's, final pastimes, I was there with him for 5 months, and there was a 6-week period in that time where I was literally chastised every single day, many, many times a day. And whilst my heart danced and felt so blessed and grateful for that, because I could see how much he was investing in me, despite him having no need to do so. The mind and ego, obviously, naturally, no matter how much we love our spiritual masters, they get disturbed. That's their job, right? Like Balaram, take the plow and, break things up, clear those anarthas. And that disruption, and this doesn't just happen when we're in personal association with a guru, even when we have one of Vani, we can have difficulties with that personality of the guru in a variety of ways. And it can create some resistance to surrender or hearing. But understanding that gurus ultimately, so some things that I found helpful was sometimes I would go to Prabhupada as my grandfather, knowing that Bhaktisiddhartha Maharaj's son, and the grandparent is always softer than the parent. So I would go to him and I would beg to him and I would pray to him, and he would pacify my heart and he would reciprocate, And so this idea that we see Balaram or even Lord Nityananda as the original guru, and we go to them sometimes it's not that, oh, you need to go to Balaram for this, or you need to go to Lord Nityananda. It's by understanding these connections, we have another avenue. Because sadly, as much as we want to wake up, as much as we want to totally be acting and being in our essence, in our reality, the ego and mind and intelligence, they're thick coverings. They're thick because they've been around for a long time. They're subtle, so they're difficult to spot. So if they're difficult to spot and they're very strongly adhered because they've been around for a long time, they're going to be harder to remove. So we need many different ways to tackle them, many different personalities to address them. The mind constantly needs to be retrained. There isn't one single psychological technique that can work permanently for dealing with the mind. There has to be, multifold approach, because the mind's constantly changing, transforming. It's like a virus. Viruses are constantly transforming to survive, right? The mind's the same, constantly transforming to survive. Well, what else can I dig up from all these millions of lifetimes of impressions that I can use to trip you up? Just doing that on purpose. The false ego and mind are like another entity. They're there, they know that actually for a devotee, this could be our final life, final appearance here as a conditioned soul. And so they know they're not going to be around much longer. When we change bodies, we change bodies. But the mind, ego, intelligence, like, yes, well, I'll be there with you in the next body. But when we take our spiritual life very seriously, they put up more of a fight. And so we need many ways to tackle them. So if it encourages you, if it appeals to you to approach Balaram in improving your service to the spiritual master, then there's no better person. But if it doesn't inspire, don't force it.
Thank you so much for this wonderful answer. So Sharadia typed out her question. I'd like to read it. If we disappoint a Vaishnav by not meeting their expectations as a friend, does that count as an offense? Sometimes our friends have need for more support, contact, etc. that we can easily offer. If we thus disappoint them by not being the friend they want us to be, is that an offense?
That's a very good question. It's a question that does come up regularly, is that, sometimes even when we're not behaving in an offensive manner or doing anything offensive, another person can feel offended. So this is one of the reasons why I say, rather than being scared and constantly avoiding offensive behavior, it's better to focus on the positive, because the science of offense is quite complicated, because there's multiple factors that are to be taken into consideration. There is the behavior itself. Is the behavior and interaction itself offensive? Secondly is how the other person receives it, right? Do they feel offended? Do they feel upset by it? So this is where relationships can be complicated, because you have two free wills walking side by side, right? Both either working synergistically or competing. And then there's the other question where even when our behavior is offensive, the other person may not take offense because they're so exalted or they're so humble, right? So, and then there's the Krishna factor, that actually if we offend someone who isn't taking offense, then Krishna intervenes. Then there's the other side. Even if Krishna intervenes, that person can actually block Krishna from intervening by begging Krishna to forgive us, just like Haridas Thakur does in the marketplaces. So this science of offense is really ultimately boils down to relationship. So disappointing a friend doesn't necessarily constitute an offense. It's more about, do we let it become an offense, or do we deal with it out of love, affection, cooperation, and in a spirit, in a mood that allows it to help our relationship with that friend rather than destroy it and eventually then become full of resentment, lack of forgiveness, which ultimately then leads to offensive thinking, which then leads to offensive behavior. So it's relative, you know. If we want to know how to please the Vaishnavas, ask them. So some of our friends might not be ready to hear certain things. Also, in terms of expectations, I think in any relationship, having very conscious dialogue about what expectations are is really important, you know. So I would say, like, for me personally, my closest friends are the types of personalities where even if we don't speak for 3 months, when we do speak, it's very close. It feels like no time has passed and there's no barriers there. I know other people who, for them, a good friendship means speaking literally multiple times a week. You know, otherwise they don't feel it's a friendship that's honored, right? So different persons have different personality types, also have different needs. We also have different ways of communicating. And this is all still stemming from our true nature, because there's even more variety and different ways of communicating in our real life. We're all, you know, here we get caught up in sexism when there's only, you know, 2 or 3 genders maximum, right? Here we get caught up in racism when, again, there's only a handful of, you know, there's only a few races, there's only a few different types of, you know, skin color. We're all on a spectrum of anywhere between white and dark brown, right? So and yet we find reason to conflict, to be disappointed, have expectations, to create factions. In our real life, there's multiple colors, multiple ages, multiple shades, multiple variety of personalities. I mean, we look even in this material universe, gender goes beyond just male and female when we're going into the heavenly planets. So disappointing another Vaishnava, disappointing a friend in particular, doesn't have to become an offense. It can, but it doesn't have to. I hope that answers your question.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for that beautiful answer. Yes, Shraddha says thank you. So yeah, and thank you so much for coming here, taking time out of your busy schedule to, you know, give us this nectar. It's so wonderful to see how you can, you know, do this whole psychological approach and meet people on that level, but then also, you know, come down here and then just speak about the glories of the Lord. It's so wonderful that you have this wide spectrum. So yeah, thanks again for
by your mercy, gave me permission to speak, so I was able to say a few things. And then we have exalted Vaishnavis on this call who have also, you know, really it's by their potency that anything useful was said. So thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bol, ladies. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.